Marlowe had heard the word failure attached to her name so many times by her sister that it had almost stopped landing. Almost. There was Thanksgiving, where Vanessa had announced to the entire extended family that Marlowe's little startup was a cute hobby, but probably not going anywhere. There was the Christmas where she had explained to their aunt, loudly, across the dinner table, that Marlowe had never really found her footing professionally. There was the birthday dinner where Vanessa had smiled at Marlowe with the particular smile of someone who considered themselves helpful and said maybe it was time to think about something more stable. Every family gathering, every opportunity. The same story was told the same way, Marlowe as the sister who hadn't quite figured it out yet. Marlowe had stopped correcting her, not because the corrections didn't exist. They existed in abundance, in quarterly revenue reports, in a client list that would have silenced every dinner table conversation Vanessa had ever started, in a company that had been growing steadily and quietly for 5 years, while Vanessa had been narrating its failure to anyone who would listen. Marlowe had stopped correcting her because she understood something Vanessa didn't. The truth was going to correct itself. She just hadn't known it was going to happen on a Monday morning in a glass-walled conference room when Vanessa walked in for her first day at her new job and found Marlowe already sitting at the head of the table. Before Vanessa walks into that conference room and sees who's already sitting at the head of the table, hit subscribe right now. Because the 20 minutes after that meeting when the door closes and these two sisters finally have a real conversation is where this story becomes something you will think about for a long time. New videos every single week. Hit like if you have ever built something real, while someone who should have known better called it nothing. Drop a comment, have you ever let someone keep getting the story wrong because you knew the truth was going to show up eventually? Now let's go back to Austin, because Marlowe just saw the offer letter, and her sister has absolutely no idea what Monday morning is going to look like. My name is Marlowe. I am 31 years old and I live in Austin, Texas. I run a company, have been running it for 5 years, and the people who work with me professionally would describe me as direct, organized, and genuinely invested in building something that lasts. The people who knew me growing up would describe me differently depending on who was doing the describing. My parents would say I was always the quiet one. My extended family would probably say I was the one who was still figuring things out, because that was the version of me that had been narrated to them, consistently and confidently, by my sister Vanessa at every family gathering for the better part of 5 years. I had stopped correcting her a long time ago, not because she was right, because I had better things to do with my time than argue with a story that was about to correct itself. The family dinner was a Sunday in October. My aunt's house, the extended family version, the kind of gathering where the table sat 14 people and the conversations overlapped, and everyone eventually found their way to asking everyone else what was new. I had arrived with a bottle of wine and the specific composure of someone who had attended enough of these dinners to know exactly how they went. Vanessa arrived 20 minutes after me and immediately became the room's primary narrator. She had a gift for it, always had, the particular social ease of someone who genuinely enjoyed being the person who connected everyone to everyone else's story. She talked about her own job, her apartment renovation, her weekend plans, and then someone asked about me, and Vanessa answered before I had the chance. Vanessa's version of my professional life was consistent across every telling. She had been refining it for 5 years, and it had the particular smoothness of a story that had been told enough times to feel true to the teller. She said I was doing my thing with my little startup, that it was a creative project I was really passionate about, that it hadn't quite taken off the way I had hoped, but that I seemed happy enough with it. She said it warmly, that was always the part that made it hardest to interrupt, with the affectionate tone of an older sister describing a younger sibling's endearing hobby. My aunt nodded with the sympathetic understanding of someone who appreciated Vanessa's kindness in framing my stalled ambitions so gently. I passed the bread basket and said nothing. I drove home after dinner through the Austin evening with the windows down and the specific feeling I always had after those dinners, not the devastation people might expect, not the simmering resentment that would have been understandable, just a very clean and settled certainty. Vanessa's version of my life was wrong in every particular. The startup that hadn't taken off had 42 employees and a client list that covered 11 states. The creative project she found endearing had generated 7 figures in revenue the previous year. The thing she described as my passion project was a company that ran whether I was in the building or not because I had spent 5 years building systems rather than dependencies. I drove home through the warm October dark and thought, she will find out eventually. I just hadn't known yet how specifically. Apex Creative Systems had started as a single client and a clear gap in the marketing technology space. Mid-sized companies needed sophisticated creative infrastructure, but couldn't afford the agency model and weren't large enough to build it internally. Marlowe had identified the gap at 26, built a service model around it, and found her first 3 clients through her professional network within the first 8 months. By year 2, she had 12 employees. By year 4, she had moved into a proper office space in central Austin, with room for growth she had already projected. By the end of year 5, she had 42 full-time staff, enterprise contracts with clients in 11 states, 2 industry awards she had accepted on behalf of her team, an annual revenue that would have ended every dinner table conversation Vanessa had ever started about her stalled potential. The company's public profile listed the founder as M. Calloway. Her first initial only, her head of talent sent the weekly hiring update on a Tuesday morning, a standard internal document that covered open positions, pipeline status, and offer acceptances from the previous week. Marlowe read through it with her morning coffee, the way she read all operational updates, quickly, specifically, flagging items that needed her direct attention and moving through the rest. The senior account manager position had been open for 6 weeks and the search had been thorough. Her talent lead had flagged it as a strong hire, someone with solid experience, excellent interview performance across all 4 rounds, and compensation expectations that aligned well with the role's band. Marlowe read the candidate's name at the bottom of the acceptance section and put her coffee cup down. She read it again. Then she opened the full candidate profile her talent lead had attached. The profile confirmed what the name had already told her. Vanessa Calloway, her sister's married name. Calloway being the name Vanessa had kept after her divorce 3 years ago, and the name that appeared on every professional document she filed. The profile showed 4 years of account management experience at a mid-sized marketing firm, strong performance reviews, a structured exit due to company restructure, and 3 months of active job searching before Apex's recruiter had reached her through a professional network referral. She had gone through the full process, 4 interview rounds with HR and senior team members, none of which had involved Marlowe directly because Marlowe had a deliberate policy of staying out of hiring decisions until the offer stage. Vanessa had accepted the offer, signed the letter, and given notice at her previous position. She started Monday. Marlowe looked at the calendar. It was Tuesday. She had 6 days. Vanessa had been job searching since July, 3 months of applications, recruiter calls, interview preparation, and the specific exhausting process of presenting yourself professionally, while managing the uncertainty of not knowing where you were going to land. Her previous role had been eliminated in a company-wide restructure that had taken out her entire department in a single afternoon, not performance-related, just the clean impersonal arithmetic of an organization deciding it no longer needed a particular function. She had handled the transition practically, and without visible drama, because that was how Vanessa handled most things. She was genuinely competent professionally, even when she was careless personally. 3 months of searching had produced several conversations, and 2 offers she had declined, before Apex's recruiter had reached her through LinkedIn on a Tuesday afternoon. The Apex Creative Systems job description had been specific and well-written. The kind of posting that told you something real about the company's culture and expectations, rather than the generic language that most listings defaulted to. It described the senior account manager role clearly, outlined the client portfolio she would be managing, named the team structure she would be working within, and listed compensation in a range that was genuinely competitive for her experience level. She had read it twice, and then forwarded it to a friend with a note that said, "This one looks real." She had responded to the recruiter the same day. The recruiter had been professional, prepared, and clearly knowledgeable about the role. The process had felt organized from the first conversation. She had taken it as a signal about the company's overall operational quality. She had been right about that. The interview process had been thorough, 4 rounds over 3 weeks, each one with different people and a different focus. The first had been a standard HR screening, background, experience overview, compensation alignment. The second had been with the hiring manager, a woman named Dana who ran the account management division and who had asked specific and intelligent questions about Vanessa's client relationship approach. The third had been a panel interview with 2 senior team members, a strategy lead and an operations manager, who had presented a case scenario and asked her to walk through her thinking in real time. The fourth had been a final conversation with Dana again, focused on team fit and long-term goals. At no point in any of the 4 rounds had Vanessa met or spoken with the company's CEO. That was standard procedure at Apex. Marlowe stayed out of hiring until offers were made. Vanessa had done what most candidates did. She had looked up the company website, read the About page, reviewed the client testimonials, checked the company's social media presence and industry recognition. The website was professional and well designed, which she had noted approvingly. The client list was impressive, names she recognized, industries she understood. The company had received 2 industry awards in the past 3 years, both listed on the press page with brief descriptions. She had read the leadership team page, department heads, senior staff, the organizational structure. The CEO entry had listed M. Calloway with a brief professional biography and a small headshot that Vanessa had glanced at without reading the full name underneath. She had been looking at the role and the company. She had not been looking for her sister. Marlowe had made the decision to use M. Calloway on all public professional materials in year 1, not to hide from her family, not with any particular strategy in mind, but because she had read enough research on gendered name bias in business development contexts to understand that leading with an initial rather than a first name produced measurably better first responses from certain client categories. It was a practical decision made for practical reasons at a time when building client trust was everything, and she had used every legitimate advantage available. The decision had been so unremarkable in its origin that she had never thought to change it as the company grew. Her full name appeared in legal documents, contracts, and internal communications. Her public profile said M. Calloway. Vanessa had been looking at M. Calloway for 3 weeks and had not once made the connection. Vanessa had called their mom the evening the offer arrived. Marlowe knew this because her mom had mentioned it during their weekly Sunday call with the specific pleased tone she used when one of her daughters had good news. Vanessa had described the company as impressive and well run, the role as a genuine step forward, the compensation as the best she had received in her career. She had said she felt good about the culture based on everyone she had met in the process. She had said the leadership seemed solid. She had said she was excited. Their mom had said she was proud. Neither of them had mentioned the company name in enough detail for Marlowe to have been identified, or if Vanessa had mentioned Apex, their mom hadn't connected it to the company Marlowe had been running for 5 years because Marlowe had also never fully connected those 2 conversations for her parents. By the time Marlowe saw the offer letter acceptance in the hiring update on that Tuesday morning, Vanessa had already given her 2 weeks' notice at her previous position. The timeline was standard: offer accepted, notice given, start date confirmed for the first Monday of November. Vanessa had told her friends she had landed somewhere really good. She had posted a vague but positive update on her professional network page about new beginnings and exciting opportunities. She had bought a new work bag for the first day. She had done everything a person did when they had successfully navigated a difficult professional transition and arrived somewhere they felt genuinely good about. The welcome packet from Apex's HR department was scheduled to go out on the Thursday before her start date. It contained the standard new hire materials. It also contained the CEO biography with Marlowe's full name and her photograph. The new hire welcome packet went out on Thursday afternoon, prepared by Apex's HR coordinator with the same care and consistency applied to every new employee's onboarding materials. It contained the standard collection, benefits enrollment instructions, systems access setup guide, parking and building information, first day schedule, team org chart, and the company overview booklet that Marlowe had written herself in year 2 and updated annually. The company overview booklet opened with a letter from the CEO, Marlowe's photo on the left, her full name beneath it, 4 paragraphs about the company's founding and values in her own voice. The packet was emailed to Vanessa's personal address at 2:17 in the afternoon. Marlowe's HR coordinator sent the standard confirmation to the hiring manager. The process had run exactly as it always ran. Nobody had intervened. Marlowe had considered, briefly and specifically, whether to contact Vanessa before the welcome packet arrived. She had sat with the question on Wednesday evening for approximately 10 minutes before arriving at her answer. She was not going to intervene in the standard onboarding process for any new hire, including this one. Not because she wanted the Thursday revelation to be a shock, but because intervening would have required her to treat her sister differently from every other employee the company had hired, and she was not willing to establish that as a precedent on the basis of a personal relationship that had been one-sided for 5 years. The process existed because it was fair and consistent. Vanessa would receive what every other new hire received. The welcome packet would go out Thursday. Marlowe would be at her desk when the phone rang. Her phone rang at 7:15 on Saturday evening. She was at her kitchen table with her laptop and a glass of wine, reviewing a client proposal that needed her notes before Monday. She saw Vanessa's name on the screen and set her wine glass down and answered on the second ring. Vanessa's voice was different from its usual register. Not upset, not angry, not even particularly embarrassed yet. It was the specific voice of someone who had just received a significant piece of information and was still in the process of assembling it into a coherent response. She said Marlowe's name once. Then she said, "The CEO of my new company." She said it as a sentence without a verb, the grammar of someone whose usual fluency had temporarily run out of the structure it needed. Marlowe had thought about this call enough times over the preceding 4 days that she had arrived at a clear sense of how she wanted to handle it. Not coldly, not with the performance of patience that would have felt like its own kind of cruelty, just directly and warmly in the way she handled most things that mattered. She could hear Vanessa recalibrating on the other end of the line, the specific sound of a person whose understanding of a situation is being restructured while they are still in the conversation. She let Vanessa have the silence she needed. She didn't fill it with reassurance or explanation before it was asked for. She waited until Vanessa had found enough language to ask a real question. Then she answered it. The questions came in sequence, each one arriving after Marlowe answered the previous one, building a picture Vanessa was assembling piece by piece with the focused attention of someone who understood she had missed something significant and was now trying to account for the full scope of it. She asked how long the company had been running. Marlowe said 5 years. She asked how many people worked there. Marlowe said 42. She asked about the revenue. She framed it carefully, professionally, the way she would have asked a colleague rather than a sister, and Marlowe gave her a truthful answer in a range that was accurate without being specific. Each answer arrived and Vanessa received it and added it to the picture. By the fourth question, the picture was clear enough that Vanessa stopped asking about the company and asked about something else. Vanessa asked why Marlowe had never told her, and she asked it specifically, referencing the family dinners, the holiday gatherings, the particular conversations where Vanessa had offered her version of Marlowe's professional life to the assembled family, while Marlowe had sat and said nothing. She asked it without defensiveness, which surprised Marlowe slightly, more with the tone of someone genuinely trying to understand a choice that now seemed important. Marlowe told her the truth. She said she had mentioned the company at multiple family gatherings over 5 years. She said she had described what it did, named a few clients once, mentioned the team size on at least 2 occasions she could specifically remember. She said Vanessa had not asked a single follow-up question on any of those occasions. She said it clearly and without accusation. It was simply what had happened. The call lasted 22 minutes. By the end of it, Vanessa had stopped asking questions and had moved into something quieter, the specific silence of a person sitting with information that has changed the shape of something they thought they understood. Marlowe did not fill that silence with reassurance. She did not say it was fine, or that it didn't matter, or offer any of the comfort that would have made the moment smaller than it was. She simply stayed present on the line until Vanessa was ready to end it. Vanessa said she would see her Monday. She said it in a tone that carried something Marlowe had not heard in her sister's voice when it was directed at her in a very long time. Something that sounded, tentatively and unmistakably, like genuine respect. Marlowe said she would see her Monday too. Then she went back to her client's proposal. Vanessa arrived at the Apex Creative Systems office at 8:50, 10 minutes before her scheduled 9 o'clock onboarding start, which told Marlowe something when her front desk coordinator mentioned it in the morning check-in. Vanessa had always been someone who arrived on time. Punctuality was one of her genuine professional strengths. Arriving 10 minutes early on the first day was not remarkable. Arriving 10 minutes early on this particular first day, after a Saturday phone call that had restructured her understanding of the past 5 years, was a different kind of statement. Not a dramatic one, just the specific signal of a person who had decided to meet a situation with her best professional self rather than whatever else was available. Marlowe noted it and returned to her morning. The front desk coordinator greeted Vanessa with the warm efficiency that Marlowe had spent 3 years building into the company's onboarding culture. The understanding that a person's first 20 minutes in a new workplace set the emotional register for everything that followed, and that those 20 minutes deserved genuine care. She offered Vanessa coffee, showed her where to put her bag, and presented her with the physical welcome packet, a bound document in the company's brand colors with a small card attached that said "Welcome" to the team in the coordinator's handwriting. Vanessa accepted it and sat in the reception seating area and opened it. The coordinator watched her find the CEO letter page, the photo, the full name, the 4 paragraphs. She said Vanessa looked at it for a long moment without turning the page. HR Director James Chen handled Vanessa's onboarding with the same organized warmth he brought to every new hire's first morning: systems access setup, benefits enrollment walkthrough, building tour, introductions to the operations team. He had been briefed by Marlowe on Monday morning before Vanessa arrived, not with special instructions, just with the information that the new senior account manager was her sister, and that the onboarding should run exactly as it always ran with no modifications. James had nodded and said understood, and had done precisely that. He walked Vanessa through every standard element of the first morning process with genuine professional investment in her successful start. He answered every question she asked. He introduced her to the right people. He treated her like every other talented person who had joined the company, because that was what she was. Vanessa met her direct team before three account managers, who had been at the company between 1 and 3 years, and who received her with the specific warmth of a team that genuinely liked where they worked and was predisposed to welcome someone new on that basis. They showed her the shared systems, walked her through the current client portfolio she would be stepping into, and answered her questions with the kind of transparency that only existed in teams where information sharing was culturally normal rather than politically managed. One of them said unprompted, in the casual way people said true things, that it was a genuinely good place to work, that the leadership was clear and fair, that they had never once felt like they didn't know where things stood. Vanessa listened and said that was good to hear. She meant it. James came to collect Vanessa at 9:58 for the CEO welcome meeting, standard practice at Apex for all new hires in senior roles. A 30-minute conversation that Marlowe had built into the onboarding process in year 2, because she believed that every senior employee deserved direct access to the company's leadership and values from day one, rather than filtering them through layers of organizational hierarchy. He walked her from the account management floor to the executive level conference room, glass walls, long table, Austin skyline visible through the west-facing windows. He said the CEO held these welcome meetings for all senior new hires and that it was a good conversation, that people always left it feeling clear about the company's direction. Vanessa said that sounded good. She had known since Saturday what she was walking into. She walked in anyway. Marlowe was already seated at the head of the conference table when Vanessa came through the door, laptop open, a notepad beside it. The same position she occupied at every Monday morning leadership meeting, and every client presentation, and every significant conversation the company had conducted in that room over 5 years. She looked up when Vanessa entered, not with a particular ceremony, not with the performance of a reveal that had already happened on a Saturday phone call, just with the genuine attentiveness she brought to every new hire welcome meeting. She said good morning. She said she was glad Vanessa was there. She meant both things completely and without irony. The conference room was the same conference room it always was. The meeting was the same meeting it always was. The only thing different was who was sitting across from who. The welcome meeting ran its standard 30 minutes. Marlowe covered the company's founding story, its core values, the leadership philosophy she had built the culture around, the expectations she held for senior team members, and the support structure she provided in return. She asked Vanessa about her professional goals, what she was hoping to build in the role, what kind of leadership she worked best under. She listened to the answers with the same genuine attention she brought to every new hire conversation, not filtered through 5 years of family dinners, not colored by the particular history that existed between them outside that room. Vanessa answered every question professionally, specifically, and well. She was good at her job. Marlowe had known that from the hiring file, and the 30 minutes confirmed it. The meeting ended on time. James came to the door. Vanessa did not move toward it. James had his hand on the conference room door when Vanessa said, "Could we have a few more minutes?" She said it to Marlowe, not to James, in the specific tone of someone making a professional request rather than a personal one. James looked at Marlowe. Marlowe said that was fine and thanked him, and he pulled the door closed behind him with the quiet efficiency of someone who understood when a room needed to be left alone. The conference room settled into the particular stillness of a space that had just shifted from formal to private. Vanessa was still in her chair, same posture, same professional composure she had carried through the entire morning. Marlowe closed her laptop and set her pen down and gave Vanessa her complete attention. Outside the glass walls, the office continued its normal Monday rhythm. Vanessa had asked for a few minutes, and Marlowe gave her 20, not because she had nothing else on her Monday, but because she understood that this conversation had been 5 years in the making, and that giving it less than it required would mean having it again in a different form later. Vanessa started by saying she had spent the weekend thinking. She said she had gone back through her memory of the family dinners, the specific ones, the specific comments, with the new information in place, and the picture that emerged was different from the one she had been carrying. She said she was aware that this was an inadequate way to begin. Marlowe said it was a fine way to begin. She said the beginning was the part that mattered and that Vanessa had done it. Vanessa said she hadn't known. She said it simply and directly, not as an excuse, just as a fact she was establishing before anything else. Then she said the harder thing, that she wasn't sure knowing would have changed how she talked about Marlowe's work at those dinners, because her understanding of Marlowe's professional life had been based on her own assumptions, rather than on anything Marlowe had actually said. She said she had filled the gaps in her knowledge with a story that was easier than uncertainty, and had repeated that story until it had felt like information. She said it with the specific discomfort of someone saying a true thing about themselves that they would have preferred not to be true. Marlowe looked at her and said, "I know. That's the most honest thing you've said to me in 5 years." Vanessa asked the question she had asked on Saturday, but differently this time. Not why didn't you tell me, but why did you let me keep going? Why had Marlowe sat at those dinner tables for 5 years and listened to the wrong version of her life being delivered to their family without correcting it? Marlowe thought about the answer for a moment before giving it. She said she had tried correcting it in the first year, had mentioned the company, the clients, the team, and the corrections had not landed because Vanessa had not been listening to them. She said at some point she had understood that the correction needed to come from reality rather than from her. She said, "I built something real. I trusted that real things showed up eventually." She looked at her sister. They did. Their parents called Marlowe at 6:30 that evening. Her mom first, her dad getting on the line within 30 seconds, both of them with the particular energy of people who had just received significant information and were still processing its full implications. Vanessa had called them from the parking lot after her first day, had apparently sat in her car for 20 minutes before driving home, and had called their parents and told them everything. Her mom said she hadn't known the scope of what Marlowe had built. Her dad said he was sorry they hadn't asked more questions. Marlowe received both statements without rushing to make them comfortable. She said she appreciated them saying so. She said the company was doing well and that she was glad Vanessa had landed somewhere good. She meant both things. The message came at 9:17. Marlowe was at her desk finishing the client proposal she had been working on Saturday when the call had interrupted her. It was from Vanessa. It was 4 sentences long. It did not begin with sorry, which Marlowe noted and appreciated, because sorry as an opener tended to make apologies about the person delivering them rather than the person receiving them. It said that Vanessa had spent the day watching Marlowe's company operate and had understood something she hadn't before about the difference between building something and talking about building something. It said she was proud of her, the word proud carrying more weight than its 4 letters because it had never been directed at Marlowe from this direction before. It said she would see her tomorrow. Marlowe read it twice. Then she saved it and went back to the proposal. Marlowe arrived at the Apex Creative Systems office at 8:30 the following morning, the same time she arrived every morning, the same routine she had built over 5 years of running a company that required her consistent presence rather than her occasional inspiration. She made coffee in the kitchen, reviewed her calendar, checked the overnight messages from the West Coast client, whose time zone always produced late correspondence. Vanessa arrived at 8:50, 10 minutes early again, which Marlowe suspected might become her pattern. They passed each other in the hallway near the account management floor. Vanessa said good morning. Marlowe said good morning back. It was an ordinary exchange between a CEO and a senior employee on a normal Tuesday. It was also the first ordinary exchange they had ever had. Marlowe went to her office and opened her laptop, and the company continued doing what it had always done, exactly what she had built it to do.